Good morning, and this part is thoughts to keep in mind. These are the little extra sections in between that help us understand what's going on and put things in perspective, ready for what we're going to read next. Jesus will say to all of Israel, "Come home." This gives us a rundown of what's going to happen next. Remember, so far what we've done is we've gone through a lot of history, actually. During Abraham's time, we slowed down a little bit in Genesis and read a lot about Abraham. Then we sped up and went to Moses and kind of slowed down there, where we really talked about the Exodus and all the things that happened there, and Deuteronomy, and got a good idea. Then Joshua, we talked a lot about Joshua. Then we slowly sped up again, where we talked about the judges and different judges over quite a bit of time. And then we slowed down a little bit on Saul, David, and Solomon. And then we sort of sped up a bit through the kings. And yet we're coming to the end of the kings, and we're finding that actually we're coming to the end of the Bible's history. It's because we've covered all of the history, and what we're going to see next is a lot of the preaching at different times, especially near the end of that history. At least that's how I've looked at it, is that we've got quite far. We've come to almost where they're scattered, which is not the end of their history, because we do have a lot after that too. The return or partial return and things that revelations there, but it's really interesting to see how we get an overview and then we get little snippets of other things that are important. In the desert of Sinai, Moses gathered the children of Israel at the foot of the mountain. There the Lord declared that he wanted to turn this group of recently liberated slaves into a mighty people. "Ye shall be unto me," he said, "a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." He promised that they would flourish and prosper even when surrounded by larger and more powerful enemies. All this would happen not because Israelites were more numerous or strong or skillful. It would happen, the Lord explained, if they obey his voice, indeed keep his covenant. God's power, not their own, would make them mighty. And as you read the Book of Mormon, this all ties in, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. When you read the Book of Mormon, you see that Nephi really gets this, understands that you need to be righteous for this. You need to keep the covenants for God's power. If not, then you're no better than those other nations. And that's what he gets to in the Book of Mormon a lot. Yet the Israelites didn't always obey God's voice, and over time they stopped keeping his covenant. Many worshipped other gods and adopted the practices of the cultures around them. They rejected the very thing that made them a distinct nation, their covenant relationship with the Lord. Without God's power protecting them, there was nothing to stop their enemies. That is what we have to remember, is that they had that covenant relationship. They forsook it as well. Several times between 1735 and 735 and 720 BC, the Assyrians invaded the northern kingdom of Israel, home to 10 of the 12 tribes, and took thousands of Israelites captive in various parts of the Assyrian Empire. These Israelites became known as the Lost Tribes, in part because they were removed from their homelands and scattered among their other nations, but they were also lost in deeper sense. Over time, they lost their sense of identity as God's covenant people. Eventually, many people in the southern kingdom of Judah also turned away from the Lord. The Assyrians attacked and conquered most of the kingdom too. Only Jerusalem was miraculously preserved. Later, between 597 and 580, the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem, including the temple, and took many people captive. About 70 years later, a remnant of Judah was allowed to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. Many, however, stayed in Babylon. Notice it's the Assyrians that attacked, but it's the Babylonians that let them return. Two different groups that the Israelites were under. As time passed, Israelites from all the tribes were scattered with a whirlwind among all the nations among whom they knew not. Some the Lord led away to other lands, like in Lehi and his family. Others left Israel to escape capture or for political or economic reasons. We call all these events the scattering of Israel, and it is important to know about the scattering for several reasons. For one thing, it's a major topic of the Old Testament. Many Old Testament prophets were witnesses of the spiritual downfall that led to the scattering. They foresaw it and warned about it. Some of them even lived through it. That's helpful to remember when you read the books of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, and other prophets in the latter part of the Old Testament. With this context in mind, when you read the prophecies about Syria and Babylon, idolatry, captivity, and destruction, eventually restoration, you will know that what they are talking about. Understanding the scattering of Israel will help you understand the Book of Mormon better too, because the Book of Mormon is a record of a branch of scattered Israel. This record begins with Lehi's family fleeing Jerusalem around 600 BC, just before the Babylonians attacked. Lehi was one of those prophets who prophesied about the scattering of Israel, and his family helped fulfill the prophecy, taking their branch of Israel and planting it on the other side of the world in the Americas. The scattering of Israel, however, is only half the story. The Lord doesn't forget his people, nor does he abandon them, even when they have abandoned him. The many prophecies that the Lord would scatter Israel were accompanied by many promises that he would one day gather them. That day is today, our day. The gathering of Israel began in 1836, thousands of years after Moses gathered the children of Israel at the foot of Mount Sinai, Moses appeared in the Kirtland Temple to give Joseph Smith the keys of the gathering of Israel from the four parts of the earth. Now, with the direction of the people who hold the keys, the tribes of Israel are being gathered from every nation where the Lord's servants are able to go. And there's a depiction of Moses appearing. And President Russell M. Nelson called this gathering the most important thing, and I believe this, the most important thing taking place on the earth today. Nothing else compares in magnitude, nothing else compares in importance, nothing else compares in majesty. And if you choose to, if you want to, you can be a big part of it. How can we help? What does it mean to gather Israel? Does it mean restoring the 12 tribes to the land they once inhabited? Actually, it means something much greater and much more eternal, as President Nelson explained. When we speak of gathering, we are simply saying this fundamental truth. Every one of our Heavenly Father's children on both sides of the veil deserves to hear the message of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. Anytime you do anything that helps anyone on either side of the veil take a step toward making covenants with God and receiving their essential baptismal and temple ordinances, you are helping to gather Israel. It is simple as that. We just had two quotes from President Nelson that are classic quotes that you should, if you're following along very much, have heard several times, because they are so essential to what the church is about and what we're doing in this day. This happens, as Isaiah said, one by one, or as Jeremiah predicted, one of a city, two of a family. This is one that they don't quote President Nelson, but they could have, because he talked about the one by one and reaching out to the one. Gathering Israel means bringing God's children back to Him. It means restoring them to their covenant relationship, and that again could be a quote from President Nelson, where he explains Hesed and the covenant relationship we have, the love that we can have through the covenants we make. It means reestablishing the holy nation He proposed to establish so long ago. Come home. As one who has made a covenant with God, you are part of the house of Israel. You have gathered. You are a gatherer. The centuries-long epic story of the covenant people is building to its climax, and you are a key player. Now is the time when Jesus will say to all Israel, "Come home." This is the message of gatherers. Come home to the covenant. Come home to Zion. Come home to Jesus Christ, the Holy One of Israel. He will bring you home to God, your Father. What some beautiful words that they put in there. And when we're reading these verses in the Bible, I hope we can see that come through, and that Hesed that we should have, and the Hesed, or the love that God has for us as we keep our covenants.